Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Financial Advisors Want to Know podcast. I'm Catherine Tindall, a CPA here with Dominion Enterprise Services. We're a specialty tax and accounting firm that works for financial advisors for their specific tax needs. In today's episode, I have Caleb Brown with me. Caleb assists financial planning firm owners with sourcing, screening, and selecting new financial planner candidates to integrate into their growing firms. Additionally, he helps new financial planners secure compelling entry-level opportunities at financial planning firms across the U.S. Through new planner recruiting. You can connect with Caleb to learn more about Generation Y, the talented new financial planners he works with every day, and the financial planning firms he represents that have great stories to share with prospective hires. And today we're just going to be talking all things recruiting. So thanks for joining me today, Caleb, on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, so I found you through your podcast, and given when I work with financial advisor firm clients, talent acquisition, retention, ascension, training, like that is the real business model. That's the problem in the business that most of them are complaining about. So this is a really timely episode for us to talk about, especially as we're coming into the autumn. So what's been your experience, and where do you think advisors really should start thinking when, a lot of people that I have, they've made their first couple of hires. It might be people that they know personally or people that they worked in a previous firm with or something like that. But, what's the kind of process that you take firm owners through when, they're, we need to start scaling, like, we've figured out client acquisition. Now we need to figure out talent acquisition. Where do you usually recommend people start?
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I mean, the people that contact me do not really have a problem with client acquisition. I mean, they come to me and say, look, we have all these clients. Caleb, if you could just find me the right people, we could double or triple our business in just probably a couple of years, right? Because we have all these people who want to work with us and we're having to tell them no, or we're having to put them on a waiting list, or we're having to drop our services. I mean, it is really a big challenge out there that a lot of, I focus mostly in the RIA channel, but financial planners in general. And when they reach out to me, I try to take them through a little strategic planning, practice management discussion on, how many clients do you have? You're trying to understand their model and their pricing and sort of their service offering and also their growth goals. And one, just to make sure that they're reasonable and realistic and that they're attractive enough for me going and telling that story to the talent pool. Because at the end of the day, that's what a recruiter does. They go to the talent pool, and a lot of these people are already employed somewhere and doing really well. And we've got to go to them with something very compelling and very appealing. And sometimes when we go through the discovery process, we find out that, okay, maybe it's not as compelling as you thought, and just give them some coaching and consulting on, if you really want that A+ player, here's what you're going to have to offer. And sometimes the firms are like, we don't want to offer that, or we can't offer that. So most recruiters aren't going to take that approach. It's like, look, we have an opening, they can pay the fee, recruiter's going to get going on it, right? We don't do that. We're very selective because the talent that we work with knows that we only work with the best firms that have the best opportunities. So I don't want to water that down and bring some sort of average opportunity to them, because then they'll start seeing us differently. So it's a fine line to walk, but I mean, just, look, I want to make sure everybody's expectations are on the same page, because every firm owner that contacts me says, I have this great opportunity. And look, they do, because they've grown a business and they're hiring someone. But if they're going for the Taylor Swift candidate, the Caitlin Clark candidate, LeBron James, I mean, that takes a lot to try to get that person. And as I said earlier, some firms just aren't set up to offer that. So I have to tell them the same things they tell their clients. You want to spend a lot more, but the portfolio will only sustain this. What do you want to do? Okay. So they're going to end up having to make the final decision, but it's very similar to the conversations they have.
Yeah. And that's just such an excellent approach, because I've found, in working with advisors and just in professional services in general, you get this, sometimes there's this tendency to do this junk bulking where you've got clients, you haven't refined down, what your offer is. You're just taking anybody that comes in. The margins are really tight, and you can't attract good talent if you haven't dialed those pieces in. And then on top of that, okay, if you're not attracting good talent, it just kind of perpetuates the problems of like, you're not actually able to do good service delivery. And so you're not able to be more picky about the clients. And then you're not able to provide good opportunities for good talent. What have you seen in terms of, so when you have firms that come in, you say, hey, I know you love this business, you've built this business with your blood and sweat, but not quite there yet for that A-level talent. Like, what are common things that you're seeing people be blindsided by in the market right now? And what are common, critiques that you tend to have that they might not be aware of?
In terms of the firms or the job seekers?
Yeah, the firms.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times I just, when we're walking through the, hey, you had this in your mind, and a lot like the client probably had a $5 million retirement, in their mind, but they only retired with $2 million. So, and look, we just come down a notch or two and we find them someone great, and they're doing great. So it's just getting we just have to get this balance, and the same thing on the job seekers too. The job seekers come to me and they think they're all LeBron and Caitlin and Taylor, and they're not, right? I have to bring okay, we got to find something that's suitable for you. So it's an interesting seat to be in. I love being in it because I'm right in the middle of all this. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's if you can find somebody who has the intangibles. Okay. And when I say intangibles, I'm talking like commitment to their career, passion for the profession, sense of urgency, emotional intelligence. All the other stuff, at least in this field, can be learned pretty quickly. Okay. So that's what I tell people. If you can find the intangibles and you can find someone who focuses on the core values, and also trust your gut. I mean, the financial planning firm owners that are listening, I mean, like, you interview people all day long. It's just your clients. It's not in a hiring situation a lot of times. So trust your gut. But some of the things that are the pitfalls, I mean, it's the virtual thing, that's a challenge for, I think, a lot of the firms in Smithville, Iowa. And they're like, well, we're an in-person firm. That's the way we've done it last 30 years. It's like, okay, that's great. I'm with you. And I do think if you're hiring, especially newer people, which I tend to focus on, being in person is better for their learning and development and just the culture. So an experienced planner, like, it shouldn't matter. Like, they already have their clients, licensing experience. They doesn't matter where they are. So there's a mismatch there. Even though the needle has swung more towards the hiring firms, which the candidates had all the leverage, but as the Fed started increasing rates and sort of the economy slowed down a little bit, some of the firms sort of backed off the gas pedal. It's still tough out there. I mean, and the candidates have their pick of where they want to go. And, and sometimes they're just like, they're like, well, I'm very interested. And then a week goes by and it's like, well, I'm not, I've got a better offer, and just things like that happen. And that's why I encourage firms that I work with, if I present you 6 people, don't fall in love with one of them and just have blinders on.
Yeah.
Work through the process you don't have to talk to all of them. Okay. Because what I've learned in the last 20 years is the person that looks the best on paper probably isn't going to be the best fit for you. That's one thing I've learned. And vice versa. Some people that look terrible on paper can do really well. And that's why just talk. If you want to talk to them, and then you want to rule them out after that, fine. But just this falling in love, and the entrepreneurs, they're client facing, they're people. They're like, oh, I connect well with, like, let's do it. Like, just explore the process with this person. That way you have a backup plan. It seems like it's sort of like common sense, and they're probably telling their clients to do that too on some of the planning issues, but I found that a lot of them won't do that. So until we work through it with them.
Yeah, that's great. And so, in the process of, you're kind of playing that referee for expectations on both sides, and then really trying to guide the firms through the process of, take your time. Like, don't fall in love. The person might move on to another opportunity, or you might get a little farther along in the screening process and realize, oh, this is not going to work. What do you usually recommend for like a typical screening process that a firm would take when looking at a candidate? Because I've had a number of firms that are clients of ours where they bring somebody on, everything seems great. Within a couple months, the person was a dud. Or like I've had people where the employee was stealing from them or just not producing anything. What are some recommendations you have to avoid those kinds of, negative outcomes? Hey there, Catherine here. Thanks for listening to the conversation. Just wanted to explain a little more about what we do. So, I'm a CPA here with Dominion. We're a tax firm that works specifically for financial advisors as they're growing and scaling their practices to help them avoid tax waste, make the right calls, and grow practices that they love. So, if you're interested in saving more, you can DM me on LinkedIn with the word guide, and I'll send you over our guide for financial advisors to scale tax efficiently. All my top tips to unlock six-figure savings. Thanks, and keep enjoying the show.
Well, already I mentioned a couple core values, sort of the intangibles, but there's three parts of the mind that you need to assess, right? There's the cognitive, the intellectual piece. That's what everybody's familiar with. So, and like for me, like we give a financial planning specific assessment. They have to do like a mini CFP. They have to do a quiz, 30-question quiz. Then they have to do a financial plan. Like these are the activities they're going to be doing in their job. So just kind of assess them on that. All right. So their planning abilities, their cognitive horsepower. There's the affective piece, which is the feeling. So introversion, extroversion, values. What are they motivated by? Is it recognition? Is it power? Is it money? Is it, altruistic, whatever it is. So just understanding those, and there's tools that you can, there's dozens of tools you can use for that. Strengths Finder, DISC, Profile XT, Culture Index, Predictive. We could just go on and on about, do a simple Google search and it'll probably have 1,000 hits easy on personality profiles. But I like that because it gives you another data point and it puts a little barrier to make the candidate exhibit effort. I'm a big effort guy. When I was coming out of school, I didn't have the top GPA. I was not the valedictorian. I didn't have, so I really had to get in there and fight and differentiate. And the candidates that exhibit we've never had a problem placing a candidate that has exhibited those sort of characteristics. Like I'm an underdog. The problems tend to be where a little bit more on the entitlement side. Like I'm not doing that. I was the top of my class at the CFP program. Like, why am I not making $150,000 right now? I've been here 6 months. And why are you asking me to greet the clients? Okay. So you get a little bit of that from some of the, depending on the tier that you're looking at. And then the last one is the conative. Okay. So cognitive, affective, conative is the doing part. So we're imagining thinking, feeling, and doing. And I'm Colby certified consultant. So Colby Corp out of Phoenix, Arizona. You can call them up and have them run through a 15-minute assessment and it's very interesting. How does the person prefer to take action? Not that they can't adapt or adjust, but how do they prefer by just coming up with ideas? Is that their first, when they're looking at work or something, is it just throwing out ideas? Is it gathering data? Is it trying to come up with a process? Is it trying to build a tangible solution? So not that any of these things are right or wrong, but some of these tools can help you build out a profile, which will keep you, if you're doing it on your own. If you have a consultant or someone like me, we're not going to let you fall in love with somebody, right? We're going to say, hey, but if you don't have someone like that, build out the profile so you have these objective measures that you can measure people to and to see whether you want to continue on with the process with them.
Yeah, that is such great feedback because something I've found, especially within our own internal firm, getting really deep into the personality profiling and testing has just made like a phenomenal difference with how we operate the firm. And even like within the client relationships, it's made a huge difference. Like being able to kind of, oh, this person is like generally this bucket. So this is probably their communication preference. Like it just lets you fast track so much in the relationship. So that's great. And in terms of like actual testing and practical steps and things like that, have you found other than, doing like a mini CFP test, doing some personality profiling? Are there other like any tips and tricks that you found over time that have helped people in the screening process that you can recommend?
Yeah, I mean, just if the best candidates know right when they make contact, the interview process has started and they're being monitored, measured, assessed, whatever it is. So, I mean, I put little things in there like when they schedule. I mean, put little. Can they follow directions? Maybe you bury like reply back to this, but also attach this and see if they do it. I mean, it's amazing now, like how much people cannot follow directions, and and I think a lot of that is just sort of apathy. Like candidates are like, well, I don't really have to follow directions because the last 4 years your colleague would just hire me and throw all this money at me and I didn't have to do anything to get the job. And we backed off of that a little bit, but the market keeps, steaming, humming along, and people keep hiring, and the needle swings back more on the candidate side. You'll see more of that, but make them follow directions, instructions. See if they like, hey, here's my link to schedule a call. Do they just go in there and schedule? Or do they schedule and send you an email saying, hey, I scheduled for next Thursday? I mean, like little things like that. I mean, because try to come up with assessments or things that you're going to have them do or want them to do or expect, and set them up in, it doesn't have to be like, okay, now we're going through the screening process. You made it past level 1. Like the screening process is the whole thing, right? And just notate these little sort of like, ooh, that was really good. That person did that. They asked me, hey, what's the next step on the interview? Hey, I'm going to follow up with you, that type of thing. Just these little things, and try to add all those up. The red flags too, make a little tally mark, because a lot of times when people make bad hires, they look back and say, ooh, there were a couple little things in there that it was 50-50. We probably shouldn't have gone forward. And then we did, and we ended up having to get a divorce, right? Like it didn't work. Yep. So pay attention to those little things. And this is where I think the mistake is, he's like, we just need somebody. There were some red flags, just get them in here. And then it's like, oh no, we spent 3 months training them and they left. And that IQ assessment we gave them really wasn't helpful.
Yeah. Yep. That is so true. And I almost wonder for firms, if you're in that position, what I've heard advised in the past is you want to try to hire ahead of the need as much as you can, so that you have, you're not going to get sunk into a candidate in 3 months and then find out that they're not pulling their weight and you're still in the same problem, but now you're down, 3 months of wages on that person, where it's like, you're better off just waiting. But well, thank you for your feedback and all the, wonderful advice that you had for us on today's episode, Caleb. For people that are looking to get in touch with you, we're going to post near the show notes access to the website, which is newplannerrecruiting.com. And any final thoughts that you have for us today, Caleb?
Yeah, I mean, we've covered some good ground here, but a lot of times you can go through screening and do all this, but you're a business owner hiring somebody. There's risk associated with that. You can do a lot of these things we've talked about to mitigate some of that, but just like your client portfolios, you can't diversify all the risk out of the portfolio and still get a return, right? So same thing on the hiring. A lot of times, especially if it's a borderline situation, you just have to get them in there and just see how they do. And the firms that have better training and more formalized, more structure, and can spend the time more than just on the job showing someone once and like expecting them to do it. There tends to be a little bit more grace in there and sort of flexibility on, okay, we have a little bit more time. Maybe this person wasn't the best fit, but we have this superior training and coaching and mentoring model. A lot of times they can get it to work. The firms are like, we don't have any training. We're just going to be able to show them one time and they need to be able to do it. The stakes are so much higher, and a lot of times they're unrealistically high.
Yeah. No, that's great feedback. And, I see that a lot in my own industry of the more you can lean into the systems, also the monitoring system, so that, ahead of time, like, oh, this person's taking forever on these jobs, or, the quality is not where it needs to be. it takes a lot of the pressure off of that individual hire, or, because you're going to have, like you said, that there's a certain amount of risk if you're growing where it's just, you're going to have to eat that risk. Like it's just in the nature of growth. But yeah, well, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. And for people listening, you can get in touch with Caleb. There'll be links nearby wherever you're encountering this. And thanks again for listening to the Financial Advisors Want to Know podcast. If you want to get in touch with us, our contact information will be below for, tax advisory for firms. So thanks for joining me again today, Caleb.
Thanks for having me.